Hey everyone, thanks for joining and welcome you to all another session of Azure Developers JavaScript Days. I'm super excited to join you all. Before I kickstart, I'm Sajeetharan, working as a product manager in the Azure Cosmos DB team, focusing on making Cosmos DB as the go-to database for developers, driving features to make developer experience better on Azure Cosmos DB, and also working on integrations with other products. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat. We will be answering them as we go along. Today, I'm excited to talk about the JavaScript ecosystem on Azure Cosmos DB and take you through few end-to-end demos to showcase the latest features on the JavaScript SDK. This is what the agenda looked like. For those who are very new to Cosmos DB, I will be sharing a glimpse about Azure Cosmos DB to get started. Then I will dive into ways to interact with Azure Cosmos DB with a focus on JavaScript SDK. We'll jump in to talk about the new features that we have recently added to the JavaScript v4 SDK that was announced in September last year. I also have an end-to-end demo to showcase the usage of JavaScript SDK as well as some of the features that we recently added to improve the troubleshooting from the developer experience. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the recent integration that we have worked with Vercel. At Azure Cosmos DB, we always wanted to meet the developers where they're at. So with the recent integration of Azure Cosmos DB and Vercel, developers can deploy their applications with Azure Cosmos DB as a backend to Vercel without any cost. Let's get started. This is one slide that showcases the capabilities of Azure Cosmos DB. Let's analyze why Azure Cosmos DB a bit through a developer lens. First of all, you might know Azure Cosmos DB is a fully managed service that is no-brainer, and it can be very attractive for developers. Availability is something that helps the developers so that they can focus on the application and less focus on all the plumbing and the infrastructure. We are providing 5 nines of SLA with the capability to replicate your data with a single click. Azure Cosmos DB's currency is request units, as you might know, or we call throughput. Developers can set the throughput as they require to get the benefit of guaranteed latency. Azure Cosmos DB supports multiple data models, including documents, key value graph, and the column family. So it's interesting to a lot of developers with existing applications or platform. There are multiple supported open source APIs as well as multiple supported development languages. With this support, developers will be able to go from infrastructure as a service to a platform as a service with no or minimal code changes. The other thing from a developer standpoint, Cosmos DB being schema agnostic, which is very attractive, and again some of the service fundamentals such as global distribution, multi-master, which helps the developers out of the box to replicate the data and handle the concurrency. And some of the features such as scale, consistency, indexing are provided out of the box without any manual work needed by the developer. Azure Cosmos DB supports configuration at different modes. You can have provision throughput, or you can go with auto scale if you have a spiky workloads, or even serverless if you're building POCs, and so on. We care about security, so data security on Azure Cosmos DB supports native AAD integration as well as with customer managed key support. You can bring your own key, which helps a lot of security scenarios. Also, other thing is that NoSQL API supports for querying items using the structured query language syntax, which provides a way to query JSON objects that developers heavily use on web applications. Also, the capability that we have, such as stored procedures, user functions, triggers, which is really a big plus for developers to build some of the new developer scenarios in their applications. Some of the recently announced features on Azure Cosmos DB, such as materialized views, time travel feature, which is the change feed, and also on the analytical store, GraphQL support and vector search on Azure Cosmos DB will make the Cosmos DB as a choice for developers to build their cloud native and modern AI apps. I hope that sets the context for this session with the introduction to Azure Cosmos DB through developer lens. Some of the common use cases of Azure Cosmos DB are that if you want to build applications that scale with demand and provide low latency guarantees with high availability and geo-replication, and also considering the developer productivity features, Cosmos DB is the answer. Given that I talked about the capabilities of Azure Cosmos DB, and I also wanted to highlight the customers who are leveraging Azure Cosmos DB at a scale. These applications are mission-critical applications with millions of users accessing at the same time across the world. One of the relevant example in the current state of software industry is that ChatGPT uses Azure Cosmos DB. I just wanted to highlight that again, Azure Cosmos DB is a database for next-gen apps. With that, let me jump into the core part of this session. As I mentioned earlier, we wanted to make developers' life better, especially web developers. If you're wondering how to interact with Azure Cosmos DB, firstly, we provide REST endpoints for both data and control plane operations. Using the data plane REST endpoint, developers can work with database accounts and perform any operations. So the way you access is by using the account endpoint, which you can grab from Azure portal against the Cosmos DB account. The next one is the control plane operations REST endpoint, where you can use that to perform any of the control plane operations, such as creating the resource, deleting the resource, controlling the throughput, and so on. Next is the developer-friendly SDKs. We have built our SDKs for a wide variety of languages, starting with .NET, Java, JavaScript, Python, and Go. If you're a developer who prefers ORMs like Entity Framework, we provide that support as well. Since Azure Cosmos DB is a multi-model database with multiple APIs, especially the open sourced ones such as Mongo and Cassandra, when it comes to drivers, we do not want to reinvent the wheel. Developers can leverage the existing drivers. For example, if you're a JavaScript developer using Mongo API on Azure Cosmos DB, you can use Mongo client driver and perform all the operations on how you would do that on native MongoDB. Similarly, for Cassandra, Kremlin, and Table APIs, we provide the same support as well. Recently, we added a new feature. This is for front-end or Jamstack developers, the ability to generate graphical endpoints on Azure Cosmos DB to make the web developer experience better through Data API Builder, which is an experience to generate graphical endpoints on top of Azure Cosmos DB with few commands. This is a very cool feature, as you can build graphical endpoint and consume it on any platform, device, or any language. These are different ways to interact with Azure Cosmos DB. Since we are at Azure JavaScript Days conference, let's dive into JavaScript SDK in detail. JavaScript SDK for Azure Cosmos DB has evolved over a period of years. We have 4 different versions of JavaScript SDK. The most stable version is the version 3.0, and we recently launched the version v4.0 with a lot of capabilities back in September last year. Let me dive into some of the capabilities that we added recently. First one is the client request diagnostics. If you're a developer who wants to have insights about the operations that you perform, to provide enhanced insights into client operations, each of the Cosmos DB SDK requests that you make contains a response object which has details about the diagnostics, including the metadata lookups, retries, endpoints contacted, and the request and response stats like payload size and duration. The next feature is that if you're new to Azure Cosmos DB, you might already know that Azure Cosmos DB distributes the data across logical and physical partitions based on your partition keys to support horizontal scaling. By using hierarchical partition keys, you can configure up to 3 levels of hierarchy for your partition keys to further optimize data distribution and support the high level of scaling. We added this feature to JavaScript SDK so that you can perform all operations with hierarchical partition keys enabled. This feature lets you to build SaaS applications or multi-tenant applications, as you don't have to worry about the logical partition size, as well as you have the ability to query using a multi-level partition key support with the operations that you make on. The next feature is that change feed. Change feed is one of the cool features that developers love to have. For example, if you want to fetch all the changes that happened on a particular document, JavaScript v4 SDK supports that. Choosing to fetch the change on an entire container using a specific feed range or a partition key is supported, and then you can perform various starting points. For example, you can do with continuation tokens, or you can start the feed from the beginning, or you can start at a current time or a specific time as well. So these are natively supported with the JavaScript SDK and widely adopted in case of migration scenarios, as well as in order to real-time notification application. We also support the ability to set the priority level for your request. This ensures that Low priority requests are throttled before the high priority requests when the throughput limits are reached. So this is a handy feature. You just need to configure the throughput level with the options that are provided. We have also enabled index metrics support through the JavaScript SDK v4, which makes whenever you execute a query, the response object will have details about the indexes that you used for that particular operation. These are set of the features that we recently added, which add more value to customers to build awesome things on Azure Cosmos DB. You can follow this blog, which has details about each of these individual features as well as set of samples on how you would use it on Azure Cosmos DB using the JavaScript SDK. With that, I wanted to jump into the demo part of it. Let's see some of these capabilities in action through a demo. You can follow the demo along with me by navigating to this URL and clone the repo. And with a single command, you should be able to start the application. This application was built by Wasim Cheham. He's a cloud developer advocate in the JavaScript team. So this application is built with Next.js and React and uses Azure Cosmos DB SDK to create simple web experience that allows users to store their OpenAI ChatGPT sessions in Azure Cosmos DB. In this case, we are leveraging NoSQL API or the core API to store the chats on Azure Cosmos DB. Going with the trend of RAG pattern, basically this application retrieves based on the prompt that you send, and then a user can store those sessions. I will not dive into details on the RAG pattern as there was a separate session on how to build the capability on a web application using OpenAI. I will mainly focus on the JavaScript SDK capabilities in this application. Let me jump into the demo. So the sample is already available in public. You can just navigate to this particular URL. Basically, set of instructions are given in the repo. So this uses the sample data set that we already have in the Contoso real estate, which was put up by the JavaScript Dev Advocate team. So you can get started by creating a new Cosmos DB NoSQL API account, and then we are using the hierarchical partition key feature that I already demonstrated for storing the users and the session. And then we are leveraging the GitHub auth in order to authenticate the user. We need to have certain environment variables created. You can see the Cosmos DB account endpoint, the key, and then the GitHub auth URL, the GitHub ID and the secret. And finally, the RAG API URL. In this case, we are leveraging the existing sample that was built by the dev team of JavaScript. And finally, you need to execute this npm command in order to run the application. Then with a single command, you can see the application running locally. Let me show a quick demo on, since I have already cloned this application, you can just navigate and do a npm run dev. This should spin up the application in local. Parallelly, let me show the Cosmos DB instance that I already have, which has certain data that has been already inserted. But you can see like we are using the hierarchical partition key user ID, and then we also have a session ID. In this case, I'm using 2-level hierarchical partition key, but certainly you can go up to 3-level. Yeah, so whenever you issue a query, you need to make sure that you need to use the user ID and the session ID so that the throughput or the RU charges will be less for the point read queries, as you might already know. Let me go back and see if the application has already started. It looks like it has already started. Let me navigate to localhost 3000. Let me sign in with the GitHub ID with the GitHub authentication that we have implemented. So the capabilities of this application is that user can prompt certain questions which uses the RAG pattern to retrieve the information which is already stored. I'm not going to touch upon the part because that has been already explained in the other session. So in this case, I'm going to showcase the capabilities of JavaScript SDK that we are using to enable this application features, right? For example, in this case, at the bottom, you see the request duration and then the operation query. This particular capability is the diagnostic request that I explained earlier. So it contains the information about the query operation that you made, as well as what is the time it took to fetch the details from the database. The overall duration, as well as this is on the server side. and what is the SDK version that you're leveraging, and it contains more level details. But if you want to fetch that, you can just print the diagnostic objects. And the next capability is that the sidebar that you see, which stores the sessions of that particular user. Basically, it uses the session ID as well as the user ID, which I showed in the Cosmos DB account. Basically, we are querying using the hierarchical partition key. So these two features are highlighted in this particular demo. And yeah, let me show the code on how to use the JavaScript SDK in order to implement this. As you might see in the package JSON, we are already leveraging Cosmos DB SDK, which is version 4.0, and it contains several environment variables, as I went through earlier. And the other important part is that the lib.ts file, which imports the Azure Cosmos package, and then you can see the database that we are interacting, which is chat history, and then the container ID is the session. We also retrieve the endpoint using the endpoint environment variable as well as the key, and then you could see some of the operations that we perform. For example, yeah, we are retrieving the sessions from the database, and then you can see the items being retrieved using the fetch all operations, and then some of the CRUD operations like deleting the session item, and then listing the session as well as inserting using the hierarchical partition key. The other feature that I explained earlier is the diagnostics. So whenever you issue a request, you can see that there is a response which consists of items as well as diagnostic object. So diagnostic object will have contains about the metadata, lookup, as well as the request time, as well as the response time, and also certain other aspects that you would need to have it in your application in order to troubleshoot. In case of hierarchical partition key, you can see that we are pushing two levels of hierarchical partition key. One is the user ID and the session ID, and then you are able to store that particular data using those hierarchical partition key, and you can use the same keys to retrieve the data from the Cosmos DB as well. So this is very easy to consume, and to create an application like this to perform some of the CRUD operations using JavaScript SDK. JavaScript SDK also supports bulk, batch as well. So if you're using any of the bulk operations, certainly you can leverage the JavaScript SDK. And if you want to perform change feed for the real-time notifications, you can use it as well. So I just wanted to summarize the capabilities that we have added in this application. Let me jump into the second part of the session, which is the Vercel integration with Azure Cosmos DB. By integrating Azure Cosmos DB with Vercel, we aim to streamline the development process, making it more efficient and productive for developers. With this integration, developers can leverage the strength of both platforms, combining the serverless deployment with the capabilities of Azure Cosmos DB at free of cost. Before diving into the demo, let's take a moment to understand the significance of Next.js and Vercel for developers. Next.js and Vercel have emerged as the indispensable tools for modern web developers and web development. Vercel is a front-end cloud, which means a place to go for everything you need as a web developer to deploy the application without ever having to leave the Vercel dashboard. Vercel helps the developers to deploy their websites instantly without any configuration and management. Vercel does it on the edge so that your website is so fast and it can be accessed by anyone across the world. And it does seamlessly. While Next.js is a React framework that provides a robust foundation for building scalable and high-performance web applications. It includes first-class support for TypeScript and React while offering easy solutions for some of the most common requirements in the modern application development, which gives the developers best developer experience with all the features that they would need. Our goal with this integration is to empower developers with seamless access to powerful capabilities of Azure Cosmos DB within the Vercel platform. Developers can leverage this integration in two modes. One is directly by using the integration, which is available in the Vercel marketplace. We also have published a template for developers to get started with JavaScript SDK as well as Azure Cosmos DB. In this experience, you can see when you commit the code to GitHub, which can be fetched as Vercel projects, and then you should be able to integrate with Cosmos DB where the integration marketplace provided by Vercel by searching for Cosmos DB, and then you should be able to connect with Cosmos DB. This integration is basically to set the connection string of Cosmos DB so that you would be able to use the JavaScript SDK to connect to Cosmos DB and perform all the operations that application needs. So this is kind of the end-to-end experience. Let me show a quick demo of the integration. So this is how the experience of the integration would look like. You can search for the existing integration by using the search bar. Otherwise, you can navigate to databases and then you can see the Cosmos DB integration. When you open up this integration, you can see some of the details on the integration. And then if you're new to Cosmos DB or the JavaScript SDK, we also have a pre-built template. You can get started with this template, which is a to-do app. In this case, I just wanted to deploy the same application which I showed earlier, the chat application using the rack pattern, which stores the session of that particular user. Let me navigate to Vercel and add integration. So once you click on add integration, you can see the GitHub user account. If you want to give actions to specific projects, so in this case, let me select the rack Cosmos DB Next.js project, which I already have on GitHub. You can click on install, which will basically pop up the installation page. You can sign in using the Azure Cosmos DB credentials. For example, if you have a subscription already, if you have a Cosmos DB account existing in a particular subscription which that particular application uses. In my case, it is in the Cosmos DB general use subscription. And the Cosmos DB account in this chat app is the Contoso. Let me search for the Contoso account. So we have all the settings in place. You can see the directory subscription and which Cosmos DB account that you want to connect with this particular application, and the project in this case is rack Cosmos DB Next.js. Once you click on integrate, what happens is that it goes and complete the installation by setting the connection string of the Cosmos DB, so that you can see the integration is already done. If you want to uninstall or remove the integration, you can go ahead and remove the integration. Let me go to my application and see if I can access the application and use as it is. So if I go to dashboard and then open up the deployment, and if I access this particular application, since the deployment is completed, yeah, you can see the same experience deployed to Vercel. So that's the power of Azure Cosmos DB with Vercel integration. As a web developer, you are able to use Cosmos DB by creating a free Cosmos DB account, and then you're able to leverage the Next.js to build your application and deploy to Vercel instantly using the Vercel deployment and the Cosmos DB integration. The integration sets the Cosmos DB connection string, as you could see, as the environment variable. So this is a whole integration experience. I hope you are able to get the whole concept of the Vercel integration with Cosmos DB. Let me quickly show the next capability of this integration, which is the template. The whole concept of introducing template is that in order to make developers' life better, especially if you're new to JavaScript SDK as well as Cosmos DB, this particular template enables the developers to understand the best practices of the JavaScript SDK and the ability to perform some of the basic operations using the JavaScript SDK. So the instructions are already published in this particular GitHub repo. It's already under the Azure repo. You can go ahead and experiment with it. And then there is a sample end URL which is deployed to Vercel as well. So in this case, you can navigate to Vercel under the templates. You can search for the Azure Cosmos DB Next.js starter. And if you click on deploy, it automatically fetches the repo, and then you can see this is part of the Azure Cosmos DB. You could just provide a name for the repo saying JavaScript days and then create a repo. So this template would fetch the information from the Azure starter template that I showed earlier, and then you can add the integration as well, which would set the connection string for the Cosmos DB account. In this case, I'm connecting to the Cosmos DB account, where I have the data to be inserted. In this case, let me select my subscription ID and select the Cosmos DB account. which is Cosmos demo. And once you click on integration, it will set the connection string. And as part of this to-do application, we do have to create certain collections. So this is automatically done by the template itself. You can see the Cosmos DB container name and the Cosmos DB data name. So for example, if you want to have your own collection name, you can just give the names and then click on deploy. So once you deploy, you're good to go. You can see the application is getting deployed, and you would be able to see the template deployed to Vercel. And if you want to build your own applications, you can access the boilerplate and then modify the template according to the way you need. Yeah, cool. We have deployed the template, and then you can go to dashboard. So the application is live, and if you want to add a new true item to do JavaScript Day session, you can see that the item is getting created using the JavaScript SDK. And if you want to say delete this item, yeah. So basically we are able to perform the CRUD operations using the JavaScript SDK through the Vercel template that is already published. So that's the capability of Vercel template. We will be publishing more templates, including the rack pattern sample that I showed in the deployment scenario. With that, I have come to the end of my session. So just to summarize, if you want to get started with the JavaScript SDK and want to see the latest capabilities that we added to V4 SDK, you can navigate to ak.ms Cosmos DB.js and see the announcement on the V4 SDK. To read more about the Vercel integration and the template, you can get started with ak.ms Vercel integration. And finally, the repository that I demonstrated is available in this URL. You can start building your own repo and deploy as a template, as well as deploy to Vercel to see the. And finally, the demo repository is available in this URL. You can create your own templates if you're interested in building new templates for Cosmos DB, and reach out to us. And if you want to deploy your application to Vercel, you can follow the same demo that I showed earlier. With that, I would like to summarize some of the key points. If you're new to Cosmos DB, you can create free try Cosmos DB account using the try Azure Cosmos DB by navigating to ak.ms try Azure Cosmos DB. You should be able to create all type of APIs accounts, which is completely free. And then if you want to understand some of the best practices, we do have the Microsoft Learn module where you can learn about different concepts and SDKs and developer experience on Azure Cosmos DB. Finally, if you want to build your skills and do a certification, you can just use the Microsoft Learn platform. With that, I have come to the end of my session. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been wonderful talking to you about the JavaScript SDK and Vercel integration. Looking forward to meet you all in another session. Thanks, everyone.